Okay, thank you. All right, so welcome everybody to the third hearing of the inquiry into the status of water trading in New South Wales. The inquiry is examining the origins, purpose, regulation and abuse of the water trading market. The committee will also examine the effects of water trading on the economy, communities and the environment. I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians on the lands on which we are meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Today, we will be hearing from a number of stakeholders, including representatives of irrigation companies. While we have some witnesses with us in person, others will be appearing via video conference. I thank everyone for making the time to give evidence to this important inquiry. Before we commence, I'd like to make some brief comments about the procedures for today's hearing. Today's hearing is being broadcast live via the Parliament's website. A transcript of today's hearing will be placed on the committee's website when it becomes available. In accordance with the broadcasting guidelines, the House has authorised the filming, broadcasting and photography of committee proceedings by representatives of media organisations from any position in the room and by any member of the public from any position in the audience. Any person filming or photographing proceedings must take responsibility for the proper use of that material. This is detailed in the broadcasting resolution, a copy of which is available from the Secretariat. While parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses giving evidence today, it does not apply to what witnesses may say outside of their evidence at the hearing. I therefore urge witnesses to be careful about comments you may make to the media or to others after you complete your evidence. Committee hearings are not intended to provide a forum for people to make adverse reflections about others under the protection of parliamentary privilege. In that regard, it's important that witnesses focus on the issues raised by the inquiry terms of reference and avoid naming individuals unnecessarily. All witnesses have a right to procedural fairness according to the Procedural Fairness Resolution adopted by the House in 2018. If witnesses are unable to answer a question today and want more time to respond, they can take a question on notice. Written answers to questions taken on notice are to be provided by Tuesday, the 29th of November. Finally, could everyone please turn their mobile phones to silent for the duration of this hearing. So I now welcome our first witness, Mr. Ron McCallum. Could you please state your name and position title and swear either an oath or an affirmation?
Certainly. My name is Ron McCallum. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Burra Irrigation Limited. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much. Do you have a short opening statement? Excuse me.
Good morning, everyone. I would just like to reaffirm the apologies of our chair, Noel Baxter, that he is unable to attend today. Our community and company is facing the worst flood crisis in over 50 years. The community and company have been dealing with this crisis for over 6 weeks. Today, our hometown of Deniliquin has been advised of selected evacuations will be required. It would be inappropriate for 2 senior officers to be away from the region in the current circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Mr. McCallum. Yes,
correct.
Okay, all right. So we'll proceed to questions from members, and I'll just say from the outset that the member in the room there is Mr. Fang. Everybody else is participating remotely for this inquiry. So Mr.
I'm
Fang,
here in the room now, Kate. By the way, it's Rose. But,
okay, Rose.
But
sorry,
I asked all of my questions to Mr. McCallum when he appeared in Griffith. So.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Jackson. Okay, that's good. Thank you. It's difficult to see, obviously, from where I'm sitting. Mr. Fang, did you want to proceed with questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. McCallum, for appearing today. And the thoughts of myself and the committee with your shareholders and the directors who are impacted with the flooding, not only today, but also through the past 6 weeks. We trust that everyone is safe and well. It's interesting that you've started with talking about the flooding and obviously the issues there, and dealing with what is crisis. It's come to the committee's attention that it's probably not the first crisis that MIL's had to deal with. We've been made aware that the organisation itself is had a report commissioned and delivered that identified a number of failings, that there were failures with the directorships, there was failures with governance, there were issues with insider information. Can you tell this committee what your organisation has done to refer that information to corporate authorities, to governance authorities, and what steps they have taken to action the recommendations of the report?
Certainly. Thank you for your question.
I might ask you to move the microphone a little bit closer as well, please.
Okay. Thank you. So when I appeared in Griffith, I'd been in the role for 2 months. So I am very short tenure in the role. But in terms of the report you refer to, which I assume is the Deloitte report, I'm really going to focus on what I've done since I joined. Post the hearing, I commissioned Deloitte to come back into the business and undertake a review of the recommendations from the initial report, and also to provide an update on recommendations around governance, because it had been 5 years since the initial report was done. One of the main resolutions from that is going to our AGM this Thursday. Post the AGM, the additional resolutions will be considered by our board. That is our main item for discussion at our board meeting on Thursday afternoon. As a company, and certainly as a new CEO, I've taken the recommendation seriously, and so have our board. So I believe we've taken the appropriate steps to ensure that the recommendations that require shareholder approval are put to our AGM, and that require board consideration are going through that process.
I believe, and there's obviously been numerous leaks out of your organisation about this report, but the report's never been made public. Can you talk to the report that was delivered in 2017 as to what the recommendations were and what actions were taken by your organisation to correct the governance and oversight issues?
Certainly. So I can cover off some of the recommendations and certainly what we've done from the 22 report, which, as I said, is, for me, that is a critical report.
I'll come to the 22 report. What I'm talking about now is the report that was provided in 2017, which for some reason hasn't been provided to this committee yet. In fact, while I'm on that issue, are you able to provide a copy of that report to the committee so that we can better inform ourselves when we're writing the recommendations?
Well, that report's covered by privilege.
Yes, and in the circumstance that this committee has parliamentary privilege, we're seeking that the organisation tables a copy of that report.
I will take that on notice.
Okay.
So in relation to as I said, the recommendations that were tabled, a number of those have been actioned and completed.
We're talking about the 2017 report now?
Yes. I mean, as I said, I have one set of recommendations, which relates to the 22 report. I mean,
I'll come to the 22 report. I need to focus on...
I understand that, but the 2017 report was not commissioned by myself. It's not my focus. I'm focused on, if any recommendations weren't considered and actioned, that's what I've asked Deloitte.
Mr. McCalman, I appreciate that you've made yourself available today in what are very difficult circumstances. However, we sought to have other representatives from your organisation appear, and in circumstances...
Sorry, can I just pick... We had a request on Wednesday of last week for our chair to appear. That's not a lot of notice. And as I said, we're
I
dealing with a genuine...
I believe that there was a number of invitations that were circulated prior to that. Now, we can delve into the syntax of that. What I'm asking you is, I need to first establish historic governance issues with the organisation. While I understand you didn't seek to have the 2017 report commissioned, you would be very well aware of its contents. You are well aware of what your organisation did in order to address the concerns, and you would be aware why that report has not been passed on to corporate regulators. And those are the questions that I'm asking you now about the 2017 report.
As I stated, I have not focused on the 2017 report. I specifically asked Deloitte to update me on the recommendations in which I was given on the 10th of October this year, which I'm having going to our AGM. So in 6 weeks, we have gone through the recommendations and I've taken those up to our shareholders for their consideration.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I have been very specific on what I've needed to focus on.
I understand that. However, there appears to have been a failure of MIL to address concerns that were raised in a report that it commissioned that identified issues of governance, of directorships, and of information flow. Now, I appreciate you perhaps weren't in the chair at the time, but this committee is seeking to understand what actions were taken by your organisation when that report was given to them, and it is seeking to understand. It is seeking to understand why it was not referred on to corporate regulators, why it was not actioned, and why it has not been provided to its shareholders.
Okay, so I'm going to step you through the recommendations and the updates from 22. They are linked, and that will deal with each of the recommendations. Okay, I think that's the best way. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go around in circles because I am not party to the 2017 report, and I have not focused on it. So the first recommendation was around new training and processes. The status of that is that it's been partially implemented, and the recommendation from the 22 report was that we complete that. Now, that matter in relation to training and processes deals with the Director's Handbook, and the key recommendation is that it has mandatory training attached to it. So that has yet, as I said, to be considered by the board, but that will be occurring this week at our November board meeting. Compliance with codes. So again, it's been partially implemented. So our code of conduct was amended such that consequences for failure to comply with code and MIL policies and procedures may result in termination of employment engagement with MIL. So directors are required to sign off on the MIL code of conduct. The next one, it relates to code of conduct investigation and sanction procedures. The code of conduct investigations and sanction procedures has not been updated since March 2017. So that one there is also under review as part of the 2022 update. Independent review of the board. So what we're looking here is at MIL to determine board performance and ensure that there is a review process in place. We've also appointed an external firm to undertake our internal audits, and the risk management has approved bringing the internal audit of the board functions through to 2023, so first quarter next year.
In relation to the declaration of conflicts,
Yes.
historically, how has MIL dealt with it. Was that identified at all as a concern, and has it been addressed?
Yes, it has. It was identified as a concern. Now each director is required to state and update at each board meeting any conflicts of interest.
Okay. What are considered conflicts? How do you define what a conflict is?
So where there is an interest that a director may hold that in some way may conflict with their decision-making process.
Okay. And are they published? The directors' conflicts?
They're certainly minuted, so that they sit within our board papers.
Okay. If a director was to say, have an involvement in a dispute with another organisation or another entity that was involved with MIL, would that trigger the conflict declaration, in your opinion?
Yes, if there was a matter that what was placing conflict on that director, it should be disclosed, which they are a very long list of potential conflicts because, as you'd imagine, our member directors are also irrigators, so they have water licences, so all of that is disclosed in the conflict of interest register.
Right. And would this conflict also expand to interests and involvement with advocacy agencies that Murray Irrigation Limited might have involvement with?
So if a director was to sit on an advocacy body, which, as you'd be aware, there are many of them, that would need to be disclosed.
Okay. And where there is a conflict, how do you manage when issues related to an advocacy agency or another organisation or body that has direct involvement in the matter that's being discussed? How do you manage that conflict? Does the person leave the room? Are they excluded from the discussion? Are they? How is it managed within MIL?
So all of the above. As I've said, I've been here a short time, but I have seen an issue that required a director, because of their involvement with an advocacy group, to actually recuse themselves from the meeting and any decision that was taken, and that was also minuted.
Okay. When that was implemented, when was that implemented? That's probably the first question I should ask.
From memory, I think in 2020, the same time that a very rigorous conflict of interest register came in.
So 2020. Could you provide us with some insight as to what occurred within the organisation prior?
No, I cannot. I'm sorry.
Okay. Is it fair to say that it wasn't? There was no action?
I'm sorry, I could not comment.
Okay. Could you provide some insight to the relationship between your organisation and some of the other stakeholder or advocacy organisations, groups like SRI? Can you talk about the formal arrangements, the relationships that might exist?
Certainly. So, as I said, there are a number of advocacy...
You might need to bring your microphone closer again, sorry.
Sorry, there are a number of advocacy groups that MIL interact with. SRI being one of them. Those groups are primarily focused on advocating in the area of water policy, and and certainly representing irrigators in that regard. There are a significant number of groups that cover that. So MIL has relationships and contact with a number of different bodies, including irrigation councils, SRI, MRSG, and other entities that
RGA.
Sorry?
Rice growers.
Yep.
Okay. In relation to SRI, though, do you have a formalised agreement? Do you have a do you provide funding for any of their activities?
Yes. So currently there is a memorandum of understanding in place, which covers SRI and our local landholder associations, which represent irrigators to ensure that the company's understanding issues that are topical for irrigators. And historically, we have provided funding at different amounts over different years.
How much have you provided?
So last year, approximately $350,000. We have a funding arrangement this year, but I have advised SRI that we will no longer fund that organisation from the 1st of July next year. So that relationship, whilst an important relationship to ensure the company understands the advocacy, is changing as we no longer will be providing the level of funding.
For the funding that you have provided, what oversight do you have in relation to the expenditure of that funding?
Okay, so as part of that, we were provided their accounts, and we signed off by project for the allocation of the money before we paid it. So they had and again, before my time, but I have seen the type of projects that are involved in covering things such as advocacy, travel costs, issues around supporting and ensuring that the voice of irrigation farmers was able to be heard in both Canberra and here in Macquarie Street.
Okay. In relation to that last point, how did they expend that money?
Again, before my time, but the company signed off against submitted projects, so they spent that money against those projects.
Okay. I'll come back to that. I believe from reporting that there was, in 2017, the report identified a number of failures of the then directors to be meeting their directorships. Is that a fair assumption of what is contained within the Deloitte report of 2017?
I understand that questions were raised, and that was part of the, why Deloitte was commissioned. And I think out of that, you've seen a number of recommendations that Deloitte have put forward, and I can't speak to the veracity or not of allegations.
A very diplomatic answer, but probably didn't touch on what it was that I was asking, which is, did Deloitte identify that some of the directors had failed in their directorships?
As I've tried to be quite consistent, I have not fully read the Deloitte report, and I have not changed my position from when I went to Griffith.
So, Mr. McCallum, sorry.
So you continue to ask me questions that I've been very straightforward. I have not concerned myself with that type of report. I've been focused on the recommendations.
Are you telling this committee that as the person responsible for MIL, where your own organisation has commissioned a report that has been well publicised, that has identified governance and other issues within your organisation, that you are now at the head of, that you have not read the report. You cannot seriously believe that this committee would believe that.
Can I just recircle back on that? I was very clear coming in, and certainly post the meeting I attended in this committee in Griffith, I was very keen to ensure that the company had fully understood all of the recommendation and that I could be updated on any new recommendations that would come forward. To me, the past, I cannot do anything about. What I'm focused on is the future and making sure that this company has the correct governance in place. That's why Deloitte were engaged. That's why I'm focused on 22. I have not focused on hearsay and allegations that I don't know the veracity of them.
Mr. McCalman, you are under oath. Are you saying you have not read the 2017 report? You actually said that you have not read it in
what I said, and I was asked in Griffith if I'd read it, and I said I had read parts of it. Since the meeting in Griffith, I have not returned to the report. It was not my focus. What I was focused on was ensuring that the company had considered all of the recommendations, and that's why I wanted Deloitte to update the report.
Mr. McCalman, I put it to you that you have read the report, because
I'm under oath. I said to you that I had read parts, which I said to this committee at Griffith. I have not gone back and completely reread the report.
Could I ask for a percentage of how much? Could I ask? Well, because you are in charge of an organisation now that has...
Mr. Fang, order. If you could please, for just in the first instance, if we could allow the witness to at least answer and finish his response before you jump in, that would be good. Mr. McCalman, I think if you could just finish what you were saying, and Mr. Fang, just please be reminded not to badger the witness, to treat the witness respectfully, and he is able to answer questions as he sees fit. Please proceed, Mr. McCalman.
Yes, thank you. So, as I said, my focus was on making sure that the lessons taken from the recommendations were the focus of our company. And we had a very limited time window before our AGM. And if I didn't get the recommendations and the ones that needed to go back to our shareholders for approval, I would have to wait until the AGM next year. So my focus, with very limited time, has been ensuring that the recommendations that needed to go to our AGM were in a position to go through our board for approval to submit them, and then meet the timelines required to within the window of the AGM. So I'm exactly as I've said to you, that has been my focus.
Mr. McCalman, how can you, as the Chief Executive Officer, given that you just stated that your focus was to make sure that the recommendations were implemented, how can you say that if you have not read the report that previously identified the recommendations before you asked for an updated one from Deloitte?
Well, I can, because we have a completely new board to what was in place in 2017. And the thing that I need to focus on is ensuring that the governance recommendations have been implemented, or at least put through to our AGM for shareholder consideration. That has been my focus. It is my only focus.
I hope your shareholders...
Sorry?
I hope your shareholders are able to understand that you, as the CEO, have not sought to read a report that provided a very detailed analysis of your company's governance structure and provided recommendations. But I'll leave that and I will move on to some other things. In the circumstance that let's make the assumption, and I'm saying assumption here because you clearly say that you haven't read it, although I believe that there may be circumstances where it did, identify a number of governance failures. Did the organisation seek to refer those failures to an external agency, i.e. ASIC, or to to any regulator with which the governance aspects may have been looked at in more detail?
Are you referencing the 2017 report?
Yes.
I would need to take that on notice. I'm unaware whether...
Okay. Since you're taking that part of the question on notice, if you could also take on notice, if they didn't, was it discussed at the board level to do so? And if it wasn't, why not? Are you happy to take that on notice as well?
Yes.
Thank you. In relation to the issues around, I guess, the flow of information that's been provided from the board out, there's been, I guess, concerns raised in the media around things like the Snowy Hydro deals and whether there was conflicts there. Can you provide some insight to the committee as to how they occurred and what actions the organisation is taking to tighten that? It's been framed as insider trading, but I'm not certainly just seeking. Well, I'm seeking to put to you how those governance issues are being tightened up.
So I'll speak to the recommendations and the things the company has done to ensure, A, that our systems and also our directors are reminded of their obligations relating to confidentiality. So we, in 2020, introduced Diligent, which is a board management system to ensure that documents can't be printed, copied forward from the system. We ensure that all directors are utilising company-provided email accounts with instructions around the movement between private email and company email. We've reminded directors in terms of confidentiality and the importance of it. They are informed of their obligation in relation to confidentiality at the induction process for directors. We are also currently reviewing additional training around that. As I said, we have a new board. And I would like to make the point at this, you're talking around a board previously. The board currently is very focused on governance. They've been very supportive of myself in seeking to bring Deloitte back in. So the board is, as I said, it's new, but very focused on ensuring we are operating within best practice. So we've also implemented that all emails from myself are bound as clearly that this is for board information and it's confidential. There is a big focus because I am well aware that if you don't have confidentiality, it becomes very hard for the decision-making process to be as is required. So yeah, the company and the board are very focused on reaffirming confidentiality. So I am comfortable that we are progressing in that, and a few of the additional recommendations from Deloitte will also strengthen that.
So the new board members that you've got that, I guess, seeking to implement a lot of these new recommendations from the updated 2022 report, is it fair to say that the board is unanimous in its support of the new disclosures, the new governance models, the new codes with which they are operating?
As I said, in our October board meeting, I submitted the resolutions that needed to go to the AGM. This Thursday, the board will consider all of the Deloitte recommendations that can be the decision-making process for implementation. It sits at board. It doesn't require shareholder. So I don't want to speak that they have unanimous support, but there has been a strong focus and support, as I said, to bring in Deloitte to undertake an updated review.
would you say that the current board has a much stronger focus on transparency and accountability?
I believe this board, and I look at other boards I've reported through, are very focused on the accountability that they have in the process.
Would you say that if there was a failure to adopt the recommendations in the whole, that the organisation would be deficient perhaps in some of the governance structures compared to what would be considered best practice?
I think some of the recommendations, may not be adopted. One is, for example, around should independent directors have tertiary qualifications. We work in the agricultural industry, and some of the best people may not have necessarily gone to university, but bring a very lived experience that can actually add real value to our board. So those type of initiatives may not be adopted. Do I think that in any way stops us achieving a very strong governance culture? No, I do not.
Okay. I think it's fair to say that you believe that the directors, as they are currently on the board, have been open to the reform of MIL in relation to some of the governance concerns that have been raised. Have they provided feedback to you as to how they view the current Deloitte recommendations?
I haven't had any negative feedback, and given we're in the week prior to our board meeting, if I had directors having particular concerns, I think I would have started having phone calls in that regard.
Okay.
I have not had that.
Okay. So, given that, I think it's fair to say the current board is open to transparency, surely they must be prepared to release the Deloitte report from 2017.
I'm not going to speak on behalf of the board in that matter. That's, as I said, I've taken your question on notice about what decisions were made previously. That'll be a matter for the board.
And Mr. Fang, can I just interrupt there as well? The witness has agreed to take that request on notice. So if you could just direct your questions in a different direction. You have asked the witness that multiple times now. He's taking it on notice in terms of that report. So if questions could focus in a different area, that would be wise. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Chair. It's just that many of the stakeholders that I've spoken to have raised genuine concerns about the failure of that report to be
Yes,
made public.
Mr. Fang, and I'm telling you that the witness has said that he will take that on notice in terms of a request by this committee to provide that report. So there's not really anything more you can do in terms of your lines of questioning in that regard.
So I'll move now to the 2022 report. Is it to be made public? Is it to be provided to your shareholders?
I'll be honest, I haven't discussed that with the board as yet. So again, our board needs to go through the deliberation process of looking at all of the recommendations. Obviously the resolution that needed to go to our shareholders about the minimum number of independent directors. We obviously have explained why we believe that should be supported. So again, the feedback on that will come out of our board deliberations.
Okay. And is it your expectation that you would recommend to the board that they make that report public to the shareholders?
I'm very focused on transparency, so I haven't considered that yet, but that particular updated Deloitte 22 report I think a high-level overview of why we've taken the resolutions and how they've been actioned would be of merit.
Okay. Moving to future election of directors. Has there been any discussion within the organisation around the declaration of interests and declarations of interests and engagement with perhaps conflicts prior to nomination?
So not that I'm aware of.
So where there's shareholder elected directors and there's, I guess, the provision of things like CVs and experience references that are usually circulated so that people can make informed choices. Has there been any discussion at all around or there being a requirement to have possible conflicts or engagement with other external agencies with which MIL has arrangements and engagements, formalised and informal arrangements with, declared prior to their nomination?
What I can share with the committee that prior to the last member elections, the company engaged AIDC to come down and run a workshop for all prospective directors who are seeking to stand. In doing that, we're trying to ensure that all potential directors understand their obligations under the Corporations Law.
Right. Just noting the time, I should probably provide the chair the opportunity to see if there's anybody else that has any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. Is there any other questions from members? I know that Ms. Jackson said she was able to ask Mr. McCullum the questions when he last appeared in Griffith. Are there questions from any other members for the witness?
I'm fine, thank you.
Mr. O'Malley, okay, great. Okay, there's a couple of minutes left. Wes, are you done with your questions?
Yeah, look, I think I've had a good opportunity to seek some further elucidations. There may be some other matters that I'll put to Mr. McCullum and the directors in writing as questions on notice. But before I do hand over, I just wanted to say thank you again for appearing today. It's been most insightful. And again, can I reaffirm my earlier comments, and I believe I speak for the rest of the committee to say that our thoughts are with the shareholders and the community with which you are in with the recent events and the flooding, and I trust that everyone stays safe and well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for appearing, Mr. McCullum. That's the end of this session with you today. So again, from all committee members, thank you. And you have agreed to take questions on notice. The committee secretariat will be in touch with you about that. Thank you very much. The committee will now break for morning tea and we'll be back at 11 a.m.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We'll now commence our next session with our next witnesses, and we'll begin by swearing you all in. If we could start, if you each need to state your name and position, title, and swear either an oath or an affirmation, which I understand you have the words in front of you. So we'll start with you, Mr. Jones, and then we'll go to Mr. Carter and then Mr. Turnell.
Okay, thank you. So Brett Jones, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director for Murrumbidgee Irrigation, and I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Mr. Carter?
Michael Carter, the Deputy Chair of Murrumbidgee Irrigation, Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Turnell.
Yep. Michael Turnell, so I'm company secretary, and for transparency, I'm also the legal advisor, but for the purposes of today, I'm appearing in my role as company secretary and taking the oath. I swear that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you very much. Now, do either of you, any of you, have a short opening statement to make for the committee?
Yes, I'd like to do a short opening statement, if that's
Please proceed.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just for the panel, Murrumbidgee Irrigation is a water delivery company. We deliver water to farmers throughout the Murrumbidgee irrigation area, commonly known as the MIA. The MIA covers over 378,000 hectares, and water is delivered to over 3,000 properties using 1,700 kilometres of supply system, including earthing channels, concrete line channels, gravity pipelines, and pumping stations with pressurised pipelines. The MIA farmers produce a range of permanent horticultural and annual cropping products, including but not limited to wine grapes, prunes, nuts, citrus, vegetables, cotton, rice, wheat, maize, canola, and other cereals. The two main towns of the MIA are Griffith and Leeton, and we have extensive secondary processing for many commodities, including wineries, chicken processing, nut processing, juicing, and packaging facilities. In addition to the delivery system, Murrumbidgee Irrigation manages over 1,500 kilometres of drainage network, primarily for farm drainage needs. However, this network also supports local councils during times of high rainfall and flooding. And to that end, we have been in flood mode for nearly 4 months, with it lifting to local emergency management level on the 11th of October and regional emergency management on the 4th of November. So whilst not impacted as bad as some areas, we have been in flood mode for some time now. And we continue to be in that emergency mode as the event continues for the foreseeable future, requiring ongoing extensive resources and effort throughout the company. In regards to water trading and the maturing needs of the market, we participated in the wide-ranging ACCC review through submissions and providing significant amounts of information, including all customer internal, external, temporary trade, permanent irrigation rights ownership and trade, our trade processing manuals and processes, and water ordering, deliveries and conveyance data. We also provided full details of MI's own water transactions, including a list of intermediaries we use, board and management policies and processes for MI's water transactions, and all related documents. In addition, we worked with several groups as part of the Quinlivan review, which saw the Federal Water Minister and Minco support all 23 recommendations from that review. Likewise, Murrumbidgee Irrigation also supports the 23 recommendations, and where required, will continue to work with the relevant groups to implement them as required. Murrumbidgee Irrigation supports a strong and transparent water market, which enables our farmers to best manage their water needs to grow the crops they choose for the best value for irrigated agriculture. We appreciate the market has grown quickly over the last few years, and that to keep pace with this growth, the governance, oversight, structure, and support needs to be strengthened. To that end, we believe the ACCC and Quinlivan work has identified clear and deliverable actions that will strengthen the market for all participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's your statement on behalf of Murrumbidgee? Nobody else is doing an opening statement, just to check?
That's
okay, great.
No,
all right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll now move to questions from members. We'll start with you, Mr. Fang, who I understand will have the majority of questions today by the committee.
Thank you very much for making yourself available today, and much like the previous witness, I'm sure that there are people who have been affected by recent flooding in your areas, and we, as a committee, well, I speak on behalf of the committee, I'm sure, to say that we would pass our thoughts on to anybody who has been impacted by the recent heavy rains and flooding. I'd just like to turn to the organisation itself and the way that you seek to manage training and experience within the directors. Do you have a formalised training process? Do you provide guidance around what roles and responsibilities exist in the organisation when somebody perhaps becomes involved as a director?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yeah, we do have a range of needs for training. So one of the first things that we do is we have a quite extensive board charter, which when a new director joins is the company secretary takes a new director through that particular charter. And that charter covers off on the normal sort of director's responsibilities and duties of any director, and then any specific needs, of Murrumbidgee Irrigation. We also have a requirement for all directors to undertake the AICD 5-day directors course to lift their knowledge of being a director, especially our member elected directors. We then have a regular program of updating skills and that with our directors, like a new chair will do the chair course, the company secretary will do the company secretary course. It's a requirement for all directors to continue their education from year to year as well with the AICD with their updates. We also undertake a process every 2 years where we bring in an external reviewer to do an assessment of the board and the board performance and identify how the board's performing and any gaps and opportunities for improvement, which we then create action plans around and administer. And one thing that we've started at Murrumbidgee Irrigation a bit unique to boards is that we do a lot of team development exercises at the leadership team level and management team level with an external expert in that area. And we actually run the board through the same process in terms of team development as what we do for the leadership team. So, our board's done a range of different exercises with the Learn Chungy Working Genius model and what's the DISC profile, sorry, I couldn't remember. So we actually run the board through a lot of our leadership development as well and working as a team, which really provides a lot of added performance for the board to work together. So I think we have a pretty comprehensive range of training and ongoing training needs for the board and all board members.
Thank you for that. In relation to the way that you manage the requirements for disclosures, things like conflicts of interest, where you might have an involvement with an agency or an organisation which has a formalised agreement with your organisation. How do you manage those? How do you ensure that they are declared? And have you had historic issues around those declarations, and how were they managed?
Yeah, I think conflicts of interest for any board is pretty key, and we have quite a extensive part on conflicts of interest within our board charter. Basically, we have an annual disclosure, formal disclosure of all conflicts that every director submits and signs. And then basically before every meeting, the first point of order is to discuss any potential conflicts of interest that may arise out of those papers, and also for directors to update if they've recently joined, a different board or some other organisation. And mainly our directors, as soon as they're doing that, and even before they do, they will let us know and have a discussion to see whether from a management level we consider there may be a conflict or not. So I think we have a pretty robust system there. In terms of them managing the conflicts, we undertook a series of training courses with AICD people a few years ago. And the first step is that when management prepares board papers, if we think that there may be a conflict, well, in that first standing point, we will raise it that, hey, we think there may be an issue here. The board members will discuss that at the start of the meeting. And then if there is a conflict, then that particular board member will be asked to leave the room, and the rest of the board will discuss what the conflict is and then decide the best course of action, whether that be that person stays out for that discussion, or because of their expertise in that, they can contribute, but they're not part of the vote, etc., if it gets to that level. So they'll discuss a range of measures how best to manage that conflict within the board.
Okay.
I don't think, looking back, I've been here 7 years, so I can't really recall where we've had a problem. Mr. Fang, the Honourable Mr. Fang.
Wes will do.
Wes, okay, sorry. Wes, I haven't seen an area where we've had a issue with non-disclosure of conflicts, etc. We have managed conflicts on different bases at regular times throughout my 7 years, but I don't have a situation that I can recall where there was a problem or there was a problem with disclosure or anything like that.
Okay. What I might do now is just turn to the organisation itself and the way that it perhaps interacts with stakeholders and other bodies in relation to things like advocacy and lobbying. Does your organisation have any formalised agreements with other stakeholders? Do you, where you seek to influence or encourage areas of development or policy, do you do that on your own, or do you rely on an external group or agency?
Yeah, I think we do a range of options there. We are a member of the National Irrigators Council, which is the peak body for irrigation corporations like ourselves. And we're fairly active in that group in terms of, as I say, for advocacy for irrigation and irrigated agriculture. We do also do our own through our own contacts and networks, of course. And occasionally, if it's an issue that, of course, is focused on the Southern Connected Basin, we will join up with our neighbours, Murray Irrigation and Colliambly Irrigation, and we may put out like a joint media statement or release over a common issue. So they're the main ways that we advocate for the industry and for our farmers and for our stakeholders.
Do you have any engagement with landholder organisations that may advocate for the clients that you deliver to? For example, I guess previously to this session, we heard from Murray Irrigation and the funding that they provide to SRI. Do you have a similar arrangement?
No, we don't have the same arrangement as what Murray has with SRI. And I think the key difference for us is that we have such extensive range of products. And as I said at the start, a wide range of diversity in crop types here. So there are multiple groups, citrus and wine grapes marketing board and New South Wales farmers, the Marramai Food and Fibre, the Leeton citrus. So we do occasionally interact with those, and we're invited to attend, but we don't on a formal basis. They more focus on obviously their commodities and commodity prices and issues within their industry, and we more sort of focus on the water delivery side and the irrigation corporation and productivity. I think the other group we occasionally talk to and they'll contact us is also the Rice Growers Association, but we don't have any formalised system like Murray does with SRI.
And you don't provide funding to any of those organisations? Like you don't provide any funding to Rice Growers Association?
No, apart from being a member and paying our member dues, no, we don't provide any funding for any organisation like that.
So in the circumstance where you don't have those relationships with a advocacy group, do you feel as if your members have suffered because of a lack of advocacy?
I don't believe so. I think the last 7 years here that Murrumbidgee Irrigation over its history has developed a very good reputation in terms of advocacy, in terms of being, quite fair-minded, and more of a working relationship with the relevant ministers and different groups. We've built strong relationships with our main regulator, the ACCC, into government groups, etc., and often get asked to participate and just provide advice on our position.
Yep.
I think there's different ways to do advocacy, and I think ours is much more a gentler partnership way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, and the company hasn't had to do it since I've been here, but of course the company was pretty strong in the early days of the Basin Plan and advocated pretty strongly at that time and created a reasonable amount of noise at that time. And we still have the capability in-house to step up if that's required.
I guess I'm just trying to get a view as to the value to stakeholders where an organisation that's similar to yours, in fact, as you said, the locality and the similar circumstances are such that sometimes you do joint press releases. I'm trying to work out what benefit the membership of somebody like Murray Irrigation would get from funding SRI to the tune of $350,000, and why it is that organisation feels the need to do that, have that sort of engagement, yet your organisation does not.
I can't speak on behalf of Murray Irrigation and the benefits they think they achieve through that relationship. We put our funding into number one, being a very active member of the National Irrigators Council. We have an in-house policy person, a very strong policy person that's been with us for more than 10 years now. We also are funding a particular website in terms of the big river, or the Murrumbidgee, to advocate for all the great things that are happening on the Murrumbidgee, and we've put money into that. We have external support through a local company called Source Communications that assists us with all of our communications and our press releases and use of that website to advocate for the Murrumbidgee River. So we have a reasonable budget for advocacy and policy position. We just put it in through different means and believe that that better suits and represents the diverse range of farmers here. I think that's one of the key differences, again, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
You know, we have rice growers and cotton growers and grape growers and nut growers, and they all have slightly different views, and they all want to do something slightly different. We're not, just a rice growing company. So we're very careful not to get in a position where we're talking, you talk one benefit for one type of industry and that might not be the best for another. So we're very careful to stay out of that area and let their own organisations do that advocacy for themselves, whether it be the nut growers or the wine grape growers or the cotton growers.
And that approach seems eminently sensible, I would think, given the variety, I think, of crops with which your members produce. But has it been the case that SRI has approached you to partner or to provide services to you? And has your organisation ever had a formalised arrangement or provided funding to SRI?
To my knowledge, we never have. In the 7 years I've been here, we've never had a formal relationship with SRI. I don't think we've ever been formally approached in that regard. We did have a situation where SRI, through other local groups here, being members or not members, or a collective of groups under SRI's umbrella, and they tried, SRI wanted to speak on behalf of both the Murray and the Murrumbidgee. And at that time, I remember we sent emails to the Honourable Robert Borsack and others, basically saying that SRI doesn't really speak on behalf of the whole of the Murrumbidgee, and encouraged him to speak to, obviously, all those different commodity groups that I mentioned before, and ourselves and Colliambler Irrigation, etc., to get the real view of Murrumbidgee irrigation farmers.
In writing to members of Parliament, did you also write to the local member?
I'm just trying to recall. I'm sure I would have, because at that time she was a member of the Shooters Party. I did have several meetings with her during that time. I can't recall specifically. Sorry, Wes.
That's okay. Did she have do you recall if she had a view as to the relationship with SRI and yourselves, and whether she would fall one way or the other on the ability for SRI to speak for that collective within your organisation?
I don't recall specifically having those discussions with her, Wes. Most of our discussions were more around the issues of transparency and local individual issues that I used to deal directly with our local member on.
Okay. Turning now to the well-publicised and I'd say documented, but it's not been provided to us yet, issue of the Deloitte report that was commissioned by Murray Irrigation, and I guess I'll use the word suppressed or not released, or any other descriptor. Have you perhaps turned your mind to those concerns that were raised about Murray Irrigation, and whether they would perhaps exist in your organisation, and how you best look at those issues?
Yeah, well, firstly, like yourself, we've never seen the Deloitte report or know specifically what's in it. But of course, you always take the opportunity when other companies, and especially closed companies, have problems to recheck your own systems and everything. And to that end, on our conflicts of interest and our board governance, especially around our own water transactions that have been very strong, we further reinforce them with development of insider trading protocols and also water transaction protocols. And we set up what's known as the investment working group that is headed by Michael Carter as an independent, and has another independent, myself, and the chief financial officer on that, or general manager of finance, sorry, on that team, to make sure that the types of things that we heard rumours about was happening at Murray wouldn't happen here. So whilst we didn't know specifically, yes, you always have a look and you always further strengthen, and it's an ongoing development in all these sorts of areas. So, I think the company's always had a pretty robust governance structure, and we just continue to improve on that.
Right. I'm keen to know how you would perhaps tackle an issue like the Deloitte report if one was given to your organisation. And I think it's been widely reported that there's been issues around directorship roles and responsibilities, and the provision of insider information and what's occurred there. If you were given a report that outlined issues of directorships and of insider information, do you feel that you would be compelled to refer that report to regulators or corporate bodies for further investigation, or would you feel that you didn't have a requirement or responsibility to do so?
Well, I think that's an interesting hypothetical, Wes, but so dependent on the individual issues. But I'd definitely be, as the CEO, I'd definitely be taking legal counsel, and we would also be getting external legal advice on any report such as that, and what we needed to do, and where we needed to disclose to specific regulators if there was any disclosures required. So, yeah, I'll definitely be getting pretty comprehensive legal assessment and review and advice on any report such as that.
And helpfully, the company secretary made an interesting disclosure at the start of the hearing. So I'm just wondering if Mr. Turnell might want to put any views forward.
Yeah, certainly. So I think one of the main things is, again, for the directors as individuals, obviously, there's quite stringent and comprehensive set of directors' duties, obligations under the Corporations Act. So, and like Brett mentioned too, depending on the types of the issues that are raised, there's the part of obviously the directors themselves, whether they carry on in that position. But also too, I think it really depends on the types of disclosures that are in the report, to whether it goes on to a regulator for notification, and secondly, type of regulator or type of regulators that you would be disclosing to.
So in the circumstance that there was, and again, this is, I guess I'm just putting the question to you, and you can put a range of views depending on how you feel the evidence may sit. But in the circumstance that there was a significant and persistent failure of directors to discharge their duties under the requirements of that role, what would be the legal obligations of an organisation to forward those onto regulators? And if it wasn't done, what would perhaps be the the consequences to that organisation if it wasn't. Are you able to provide some guidance on that?
Yeah, so it's in terms of like a self-disclosure, particularly to ASIC, so Australian Securities Investment Commission in particular for corporations, there isn't necessarily to that extent a self-declaration of these particular sections or rules or laws have been broken. I guess the danger of continuing on a path when issues have been identified is that you would then make the issue much worse by not acting on it at a certain point in time, or putting it another way, taking a course of action which, without the right professional advice, could further complicate the issue.
Just to add to that, Wes, I think, as you say, it's very hard to do a hypothetical on what may or may not be in there, but I can assure you, firstly, from Murrumbidgee Irrigation's viewpoint, we would hope never to have such a report because of the strength of our governance and our processes and our systems. If anything did come up like that, the first thing is obviously, the board at that stage will be becoming dysfunctional, and you'd already have signs to start sort of working with the board on code of conduct issues and that anyway. And then if it then went to the next step, definitely be getting a lot more deeper legal counsel, as I've already mentioned, to make sure that we did everything in the right way. And the Murrumbidgee Irrigation's general approach to most of this is to be open and transparent. And if we do find things that we think are minor issues, then we have a very good relationship with the different regulators, so we self-disclose and have those discussions, because it's definitely the best way to do business.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to be able to compare and contrast the approaches of organisations in relation to governance and the approaches that they take. I know at the time, and I know that I've been afforded much opportunity to ask some questions. I've only got one more, and then I'll pass back to the chair to see if any other members have any questions, because I'm sure they will. But in relation to, I guess, that wider question of advocacy and what your organisation, how your organisation views that. Would it be appropriate that that your members' money is spent in order to not only, I guess, advocate with government, but to advocate for political change, i.e., for perhaps a candidate or a political organisation to further their prospects at an election or at a time when there's I guess issues arising. So would you feel that your members' money is well spent in order to campaign for political change as opposed to policy change?
I think the board has sent a very strong position that we're apolitical, and we stay out of that particular area, Wes. And obviously we will work with whoever is in government at the time for the best of irrigated agriculture from a policy viewpoint. We don't think it's in the company's interest to become political in any way.
And so, if you were to discover that you were perhaps through third parties funding election campaigns that were not relevant to your members' interest, you'd have some concerns about that?
Yes, we would. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my mind was thinking, geez, what? Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely not who we are, what we do.
Right. I'm not suggesting they are. I'm just. It's just one of those. It's one of those questions that it's interesting to know where organisations like yourself or another irrigation organisation feel that their members' money is best directed, and whether it's to third parties that may spend it on issues that are advocating away from policy into the political sphere, whether that would be considered appropriate or a good way to spend your members' money. But I think you've answered that, and I very much appreciate it. So with that, I again thank you for making yourselves available, and I'll pass back to the chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Fang. Can I check whether any other members have any questions for these witnesses? I'm okay in terms of any questions I have.
Yeah, I'm fine, Kate. I think Wes was very good in his questioning.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. That means that's the end of your time with us. So thank you. We really appreciate you making yourselves available for this hearing. If you did take any questions on notice, the Secretariat will be in touch with you. We have a slightly reduced time frame for getting those back because of the end of the year, and that deadline will be the 29th of November, but the Secretariat will be in touch with you similarly in relation to any supplementary questions members may have for you. So thank you again, and that is the end of our hearing today. Thank you.